everyone, it's so good to be chatting with you guys today. And what we're going to be chatting about today, I believe, can help all of us in the room. With friendships, relationships, in church, at school, and even at home. And I know that's big promises. But before I get there, I want to tell you a quick story. It was the first year of my A levels, and no one really tells you the step up it's going to be from GCSEs. And the fact that it actually requires you to put in some real effort and some work. Or at least my teachers might not have said anything, or they might have said something and I didn't believe them. But anyway, it got to results day. And I bombed. My results were just so bad. And I was so angry, I was upset, I was annoyed. And I don't know if you've ever been in the same experience, but you might have felt similar. Because the reality of it is, life can be really difficult sometimes. And when we kicked off this series, we looked at the promises Jesus made about getting the most out of life. It's a promise that says when we follow him, we can live a full, amazing life. We get an invitation to the greatest party there is. But what about when the challenges show up? Life gets difficult and the bad days really do happen. That doesn't feel like much of a party, does it? Remember when we talk about a party in this series, we're talking about any effort to celebrate, serve, love, include or enjoy being with others in a way that adds value to life. And being a party starter means being someone who does that for others. Not just in the good times, but also in the bad times. But can I just be real with you just for a second? For me, being a party starter for the people in my life is a lot easier to do when things are going great. When a friend scores the winning goal, they get a role in a play, or they get good grades on a test. That's easy to celebrate, isn't it? But what about when they're struggling? When they suffer a loss, or deal with something like anxiety or depression? Then it's a lot harder to figure out how to be a party starter. It's difficult to know what we are to do when we care about someone and they're struggling. And maybe that's because we're not sure what to do or to say to help them. Maybe that's because we don't really relate to or understand what they're going through. Maybe we feel like what they're dealing with isn't all that big of a deal for us. Or maybe we just struggle to understand what they're feeling if it's not what we're feeling. But if part of being a party starter means showing up for others no matter what, then we've got to figure out how to do that no matter what. No matter what challenges they're facing, no matter how they're struggling, no matter if they're unsure how to help, no matter if we understand or not. So how do we do that? Here's the good news. Knowing how to relate to other people in their challenges and suffering isn't a new problem. In fact, as long as people have existed, they've struggled not just with pain, hardships and difficulties, but with understanding how to help one another through it. Thousands of years ago, people were going through a real difficult time. There was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and a lot of challenges and a lot of sadness. In that season, a lot of people felt like nobody was there for them, including God. And when God's people needed God the most, it felt like God wasn't showing up, wasn't understanding, and wasn't doing much to help. But God always has a plan. And at that time, God's plan was to do something unexpected to remind the people then and us today that in the pain and suffering, God was really there. That plan, well, it was Jesus. And if you've spent time at church around Christmas, this part of the story might actually sound familiar to you. In their struggles, the people were waiting for someone to show up. And God showed up by sending Jesus. And that's what we celebrate at Christmas. And back then, God used prophets to pass on his messages to the people. They were like his spokespeople for God. They represented his voice and God spoke through them. And Matthew, one of Jesus' followers, quoted a prophet named Isaiah who said this. "Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with us." Maybe for some of us, this may seem like a familiar verse, but I just don't want you to miss the meaning here. When the people were struggling, suffering, and looking for somebody to help, God sent Jesus to be with them. And that literally was his name means, like God with us. It's not God fixes us or God solves our problems or God makes us feel better. While that may be what we all want sometimes, that isn't what God sent Jesus to do. God sent Jesus to simply be present, to be with us, to show up when we need somebody the most. And as party starters, that's what we can do for the people in our lives who need us too. Like, think of it this way. A party starter walks with others in their pain. When our friends are struggling, when the people in our lives are suffering, when our loved ones experience heartbreak, pain and loss, when we see people around the world in real difficult situations, we don't have to wonder what to do. We can follow God's lead and simply show up. We can be present. We can just be with them. And doing that actually means showing empathy. Empathy means we have the ability to understand and share in what other people are feeling. It's the willingness to just show up and be with somebody in the middle of what they are going through. And that's it. We don't have to have all the right words, have to have the answers to fix the problems, or be able to relate to what they're facing. All we have to do is show up. Empathy moves us to do that. Now, maybe you're thinking, can showing up really make all that much of a difference? Well, I know it can, because it definitely did for me. Like, doing terribly in my exams was really annoying. And I couldn't go back and I couldn't do all of them again. So I had to just move forward. So I decided to move to college and redo that year again and do it better. But that meant I was leaving my friends in sixth form. It meant that I was having to leave the school that I knew and I had to start again. And my day just got worse. So my friend from church, who wasn't even the school that I went to at the time, and he was the year ahead of me, spent the night with me at youth. We spoke about how things had went so bad. We played pool and table tennis, and he just let me share about my frustrations. It was in those moments I realised how good of a friend I had in church. And friends that wouldn't just leave me because I was moving school or I'd failed an exam. My friend noticed that I was struggling and they cared enough to show up and support me in it. Like, that's empathy in action. And that's what a party starter does. It's what I want to challenge all of us to do too. Like, first, notice those who are struggling. Open your eyes to what is happening in the lives of the people around you and who is struggling, who is having a rough time, who's going through a hard season, who just seems to like they are having a bad day. And pay attention to the people who may need a friend around you right now. Then care about what they're going through. Some of you are naturally empathetic people. You feel what other people feel and you care a lot about what they're going through. And for others of you, getting into that is more unnatural. It doesn't come easy to us, and that's okay. Either way, we can ask God to help us grow in caring about what the people around us are going through. We can pray for God to give us a heart that is moved to care when somebody we notice is suffering. And finally, just show up. Showing up is empathy in action. It's not fixing, it's not dismissing, and it's not downplaying. It's just showing up and being with someone who needs us. You can show up physically by hanging out with someone or by spending time with them. Or you can even show up in other ways, like sending a text, saying a prayer, writing a note, or just being a good friend. The point is to be with someone else in their own pain or grief. A party starter walks with other people in their pain, and to listen to them as they express their sadness, to simply sit in a silent moment that might feel awkward, emotional, maybe even to share in someone else's tears. There's no perfect way to do this, but choosing to show up when it'd be easier to avoid the emotions, authenticity or awkwardness of a difficult, sad or emotional situation is an important step. Showing up can feel incredibly uncomfortable when we're not the ones who are struggling, but choosing to be present and stay being present may mean more to someone else than you'll ever fully know. Whatever it is, choose to show up for someone else. That's what God did for us in Jesus, and that's what we can do for others.